Subject, shiphead Eulina. Species, Urakari. Description, reptilian humanoid, no tail. 5, 3 inches, 1.6 m AVG height. 135 pounds, 61 kilograms, AVG weight. 105-year life expectancy. Ship, RSV Loalana I fights with honor. Location, Rigara. It's good to be back aboard the RSV Loalana. The rest of the crew feels the same way. The entire crew had to go through some diplomatic courses, but I had to have the full-blown 3-month training. I was extremely envious of the crew, who simply had to learn to not speak unless spoken to and avoid being where they're not supposed to be. For them, it had been a month in a classroom and 2 months of leave. For me, it was paperwork, lectures, tests, reviews, certifications, and more paperwork. The amount of paperwork a diplomat has to do is patently unhealthy. Staring at screens that long has to be some sort of health and safety violation. At least the time away allowed the rest of the crew to distress a bit. We were even able to get crewed back up to 38. Our training had taken place on the Galactic Diplomacy Station, which had previously been a conflict resolution forum. It had offices for every Republic species, plus one for an unexpected first contact, which the United Systems was now occupying. The station had fallen into disuse because there wasn't much conflict to resolve. It was quickly cleaned up and renamed, and now there are embassies for each Republic species and the US. I'd also finally gotten a good look at an Alamari once the US moved in. They weren't nearly as frightening as the Kinren. 8 limbs, 8 eyes, and weird mandibles still made them somewhat creepy, but at least their limbs bent in proper directions and their movements were fluid. Kinren frequently have fast and jerky movements, like a puppet with an easily startled puppeteer. "Oh, wow! My pay went up 10%!" Intel head Kreen exclaimed, jerking me back to reality. "Mine did too. I'm pretty sure all of ours did," Nav head Kran explained. "Mine only went up 6%, engineering head Luna said sadly. "You get paid more than they do, so a 6% increase is more money than they get." Gruna, my new second, added. "I got a 5% increase, but that's still more money." "Yeah, you're right, second head. I just checked the math," Luna replied. "How much did you get, shiphead?" Kreen asked me. Everyone on the bridge turned to look at me with curious expressions. I had received more training than all of them, and my new job was much more intensive than theirs. So naturally, I should have received the largest raise. After all, going from a shiphead to a diplomat was a difficult change, but staying a shiphead while becoming a diplomat was even more tasking. 1%, I replied tersely. Eyes widened and jaws dropped. That's right, 1 measly percent for what has to be one of the most difficult jobs in the galaxy. Shiphead of a warship turned diplomatic vessel, responsible for keeping a good relationship between the Republic and the devastatingly powerful Leviathan known as the United Systems. It was completely unfair that I didn't get a bigger raise, considering that I would be the first to die in a conflict with the US. Tim told me as much just before we left for training. In his typical cheery way, he informed me that if the United Systems and the Republic went to war, the Loalana would be the first target. Then they would target the Galactic Diplomacy Station in Rigara, followed immediately by the Republic capital in Winuros. Sometimes talking to Tim is fun. Other times it's unnerving as all hell. The decision to limit my raise had come down from my father, of all people. He had concerns that it would look like the Republic was rewarding me for dragging the United Systems into our war with the OU if they gave me a proper raise. Uluni, who was already making more money than my bridge crew combined, got a 10% raise for her new duties. Even though that wasn't at my father's discretion, it still felt like favoritism. "Is that more money than us, like with Luna?" Kreen asked hesitantly. "No," I said. A few seconds of silence later, everyone quietly got back to work. We were once again being tasked to the Thanatos, which was currently stationed in Alpha Centauri. The Omni-Union's last attack on Sol had happened just before the USS Nidhogg had been used on the OU's stronghold system. It had been 3 months since then, so there was plenty of concern regarding how large the next attack on Sol would be. In Republic space, however, the attacks had started ramping up. We initially lost some of the territory we had regained, but with help from the United Systems, we managed to take back and defend all of our territory. We weren't resettling yet because the risk was too high, but defending these systems prevents the OU from finding the inhabited ones. Word from the strategists is that they're probably trying to take out the Republic before swarming over the US. "Ready to warp, sir," Kran informed me. "Let's go," I replied. As we jumped to warp, I began to wonder about what was happening with my proposal. The United Systems using the Republic's shipyards to build up their fleet was an idea that the Republic pounced on, and that's to be expected because we have the most to gain. The United Systems was a lot more hesitant, though. They stand to gain more ships and a more capable ally against the Omni-Union, but there are those among the US that believe they don't need either. Last month, the mobile Prime platforms were declassified, so that probably has shifted opinions a bit. Hopefully, it isn't too late. Thankfully, we hadn't seen any of the MPPs since the invasion. We were woefully unprepared to go against a weapons platform the size of a planet controlled by an artificial intelligence. Even the nearly almighty United Systems took casualties against just one of them, but there are over 100. If they all attacked at once. Arriving in Alpha Centauri, shiphead, Cran announced. Request clearance to dock with the Thanatos, I replied. They've already granted it, Kreen said with a chuckle. I don't understand, Gruna said. Is the Thanatos behind that asteroid? Everyone on the bridge turned to look at her and held their breath. We had all been waiting for this moment. She hadn't been exposed to the United Systems before, and everyone was anticipating her reaction. The briefing had contained all the measurements, but most officers understandably glaze over such things. That's not an asteroid. That's the Thanatos, I said with a grin and a comedic sigh. People really need to start reading their briefings. It took a second for my statement to register, but once it did, her eyes widened and her jaw dropped. The USS Thanatos was the largest ship she'd ever seen, and it wasn't even the largest carrier that the United Systems had. It was actually considered a small diplomatic carrier. You could almost see these thoughts enter her head as she struggled to process this. Everyone else was grinning like children. All right, let's get docked. I've got a meeting to get to, I ordered as I leaned back in my chair. At least my orders were simple. Meet with Captain Reynolds, do what he says. Put out fires between U.S. and Republic senior officers, and integrate with the U.S. Diplomatic Corps, which, according to Reynolds, would be much easier to do aboard the Thanatos than it would be on the Galactic Diplomatic Station. I didn't know if it was a good sign or a bad sign that the humans would rather have me in their space than aboard the Galactic Diplomatic Station. On the one hand, it signified a certain level of trust and friendship. On the other, it made it easier to kill me if things went wrong. I sighed quietly as I felt the clamps close around the Loalana. Scooped up, again. Pretty undignified for the ship of a dignitary. Not like there was any other way for us to dock, though. The actual docking bays were designed to hold U.S. frigates, which were 1.5 times larger than the Loalana. We're too small for those clamps, even if they weren't in use. The emergency bay had maneuverable clamps, so it could theoretically grab onto any ship it needed to, including us. Docked and locked, shiphead, Cran said. Excellent, good work, I replied. Then I keyed the ship-wide comms. Attention all personnel. We have docked with the USS Thanatos. After completing your immediate tasks, you are on shore leave for the rest of the day. A cheer rang throughout the ship. Some things never change. Bright and early tomorrow, you are to report to your diplomatic assignments. If you do not know what your assignment is or where it is, check with Second Head Gruna. She has the list. Anyone who isn't where they're supposed to be tomorrow will be subject to confinement. A groan rang throughout the ship. No whining. We're a diplomatic ship now, and that's how diplomats operate. I'd better be seeing you tomorrow. Fully functional. Dismissed. Another cheer rang throughout the ship. I disembarked before any of them managed to, and was met by a familiar hologram. The robed figure was holding a curved blade, what I now know to be called a scythe. The figure waved a greeting to me with a bony hand. Good tidings, shiphead Eulina. I assume your training was productive? Omega asked. Yeah, it was pretty enlightening and educating, I replied. Is everything okay? Yes, for now. Why do you ask? I wasn't expecting to be greeted by you. I was expecting Tim. Oh? Omega asked, tilting its head to the side. Care to elaborate on these expectations of yours while you follow the deck lights? The lights on the floor lit up. I began to follow them as I tried desperately to think of something to say to not offend the United Systems' most powerful AI. Well, it's just, Tim seems more suited to guiding, I replied, and instantly regretted my word choice. Is that right? Am I not suited to guiding people? I've been guiding the United Systems for centuries, you know, it replied. It's teasing me, trying to get me to stutter and stumble over my words. Omega wouldn't actually be offended by a slip of the tongue, I hope. That's just my point, though. You're more specialized for oversight than Tim is, at least to my understanding. Having you guide me to my meeting with Reynolds is like having a fleet head as a secretary. There's no such thing as a specialized artificial intelligence, Eulina. Some dedicate more time to gaining certain knowledge than others, but this doesn't prevent them from gaining further knowledge in other fields. As a matter of fact, with our memory capabilities, we're more suited to generalization than any organic ever could be, the AI lectured. That being said, Tim doesn't currently hold the credentials required to know about your meeting, let alone guide you to it. I hadn't actually thought about that. I suppose that all it would take for one AI to take over the position of another AI is a brief learning window. I wondered if Tim could do Omega's job before what Omega had said finally sunk in. "Oh, I'm guessing my meeting with Reynolds has been canceled?" I asked. "No, just put on hold. You have another, more pressing meeting to attend to first." "Who's the new meeting going to be with?" "You'll find out presently," Omega said with a chuckle at the nervousness in my tone. "It's classified after all." "I see. I assume that the reason for the meeting is also classified then." "Correct. Of course it is." Subject: AI Omega. Species: human-created artificial intelligence. Description: no physical description available. Ship: multiple. Location: multiple. As usual, I was handling multiple tasks at once. Trying to get all of our ships repaired and replaced while also building new fleets was a monumental task. Recruiting, training, and assigning staff to those ships was another monumental task. On top of all that, I had to deal with spoiled senators who had secured themselves firmly within social bubbles that kept them ignorant. The lack of attacks on Saul had raised tensions for a while and made the politicians more receptive, but now those tensions were evaporating, and the politicians were, to use an antiquated turn of phrase, back on their bullshit. I failed to see how giving the Republic our technology would possibly stand to benefit us, Omega, Senator Richardson said, with an insincere, dramatic flourish of frustration. The technology we would be giving them is several generations behind our own. Add to that strict oversight and anti-intelligence measures, and we have no cause for any concern. In return, we gain our new fleets at record speeds, I replied. We get new fleets, but we would be pouring money into their economy, a foreign economy which we aren't even trading with yet. My constituents have concerns about this. If I had eyes, they would be rolling. By constituents, he means the corporations that fund his campaigns. The corporations who would much rather we build our own stations and then start building the new fleets. Short-sighted fools who believe they're the smartest people in the galaxy, as fools often do. Still, they make life interesting in their own way. The Republic has to hire many of our own citizens to work aboard the stations to be able to fulfill the orders. Trainers, subject matter experts, licensed professionals, and the like. The ships are being made to our standards, and the Republic is footing the bill for the people they're hiring, I explained. So we're getting a rebate, Richardson replied sarcastically. Not only that, but integration. Your constituents could be swayed by simply pointing out that integration leads to trade and access to new markets. Our people aboard the stations will want supplies from home that the Republic cannot provide, and those supplies will be viewed with envious eyes. Before long, popular demand for trade networks will explode, I gestured. But if we vote no on the proposal, who knows how long it will be before we can secure trade guarantees? Richardson looked deep in thought. I could tell he was working on positioning statements for his corporate overlords. Finally, he nodded and waved his hand, indicating that he will vote yes. I already had more than enough yes votes, but I needed Richardson to explain to certain corporate board members why this idea had merit. A yes vote won't have much weight without corporate cooperation, and a direct meeting with me would intolerably bolster their already massive egos. Satisfied, I turned off my avatar and switched my attention to the Reptilian shiphead that I was leading to what would be the most interesting meeting of his career. The directors had been at a bit of a stalemate due to a lack of intelligence regarding the Republic's intentions. Neither they nor the Senate would sign off on an intel-gathering mission just yet, though, so I came up with an alternate solution. Shiphead Ulina has just graduated from a diplomacy training course, so he should have his finger on the Republic's pulse. Plus, I really want to see his reaction. "So I just sit here?" Ulina asked. "Correct," I replied. Ulina sat down, and I activated the chat for him. He jumped slightly as the hard light monitor and keyboard appeared in front of him. He studied it with obvious confusion on his face until he realized what it was and who it was connected to. I relished the shock and horror that overrode the confusion. Asterisk Director 1 has joined the chat asterisk. D2, and with that, we're all here. Hello, shiphead Ulina. Oh, he'll need a second to adjust. "What the fuck, Omega?" Ulina asked as he scrambled for the keyboard, his hearts beating as fast as they possibly could. "Welcome to the world of diplomacy, Ulina," I replied, gesturing toward the monitor. "This terminal is translated for your convenience. Just type the way you normally would and I'll get your point across." The Reptilian shiphead cursed under his breath as he studied the keyboard and began to type his reply. Hello, apologies for the delay. This meeting was unexpected. D4. Of course it was. We don't announce when we'll be having our meetings, and this meeting in particular is unusual for us. D9 indeed. D2. The reason we're meeting is because of your proposal. Normally we would be having Omega go through back channels to get the answers for us, but that would take too long and risk hostilities with the Republic. Instead, we're just going straight to the horse's mouth. "What's a horse?" Ulina asked. It's a four-legged mammal that's used as a mode of transportation on several human worlds, I answered. D9. Let's get to the point. We have questions for you about this proposal and our time is limited. Answer quickly and truthfully. Understood? You. Yes. D9. Good. How likely is it that the Republic will hire our own technicians to serve aboard the shipyards? You. Very likely. It's part of the assumptive draft. D2. Where will the materials be coming from? You. We have several suppliers that are both public and private. D3. Hello again, Yulina. Will the Republic allow oversight? You. Hello, Director 3. Yes, but there was some struggle with that. As long as the U.S. doesn't attempt to indenture our workers, it will be fine, though. D11. Clarify what you mean by indenture, please. You. Overwork them. D3. That's not what I meant by oversight. Will the Republic allow us to make certain that information regarding certain technologies doesn't leak? Yulina looked at my avatar with confusion. They want to be certain that sensitive technology is worked on by U.S. personnel only, and they can't be sure of that without having people who are reporting back to us, I explained. I'm confident that the Republic will approve any oversight you have planned, so long as it isn't detrimental to our citizenry. D8. I get the feeling that the Republic is borderline desperate for this to happen. Am I right? Yes. The OU is pressing again. Hard. We need the tech that you're willing to give, and we need you to be a much larger force than you are now if we're going to win this war. D13. Not to mention the economic boom. I don't know anything about that, but I expect it would be a secondary reason. There won't be an economy if we're all wiped out. Yulina didn't know it, but several directors chuckled at his reply. Despite his nervousness about his new duties, he had a certain way with words. Director 6 was fidgeting, though. In previous meetings, she had been the most unsure of this proposal. You should just say what's on your mind, Director, I said to her. I know. My intent isn't to be hostile, so I'm working on a good positioning statement, she replied. No, I don't think there's another way to word it. Best to be blunt. D6. What assurance do we have that our own technology will not be turned against us after the war with the Omni-Union is resolved? With respect, we don't go to war as often as you do. There's posturing among the members of the Republic, but it's mostly localized and rarely acted upon. As things are now, we have a numerical advantage and that's it. But by building your numbers up to match our own, improving our shields and weapons tech will still see you at a significant advantage. Even if you were to give us the shields and weapons that you're currently using, you would still be able to outmaneuver us. In short, your assurance is that we have a mostly peaceful history. You will have neutralized our numerical advantage, and you will still be significantly ahead of us technologically. D12. Well said. D5. I see no flaw in your argument. D2. Are there any other questions for Shiphead Yulina? D1. No. D12. No. D3. No. D13. No. D8. No. D4. No. D10. No. D5. No. D9. No. D6. No. D11. No. D7. No. D2. I also have no further questions. Shiphead Yulina, thank you for joining us. You are dismissed. The holographic monitor in front of Yulina winked off, and the shiphead visibly deflated in relief. After a few moments of silence, he turned to look at my avatar. Please don't do that again, he said. Meetings with the Directorate are quite rare for someone who isn't a director, I explained. No promises, though. Tim is waiting outside to guide you to Reynolds. Oh, and don't tell anyone about this meeting. Obviously. Yulina looked defeated, but managed to utter an acceptance before gathering his strength and leaving the room. I shut off my avatar and turned my attention back to the directors. D3, I concur. D9, I concur. D2. The proposal regarding the construction of new fleets will go ahead as outlined if approval by the Senate is obtained. The final agenda topic is Project Gungir. D8. Funding has been cleared. Of the recommended researchers, I nominate AI Henry to lead the project. D2. Any other nominations? Of course there won't be. Henry is extremely capable, so much so that even I rely on it. Henry was close to a solution to my infinite cloning issue, and is still upset about me postponing the project. It had taken me sharing my memories of the invasion to get it to accept the necessity of said postponement. D7, I concur. D2, Project Gungnir is approved and AI Henry will lead the project. AI Henry will select additional staff as needed. Oh, there are no further agenda items. Meeting adjourned. I watched the directors log out of their various terminals and continue about their business. Then, I double-checked Sol's sensors and made sure that the orbital defense networks were properly functioning. It had been 3 months since the OU attacked, and some believed the threat to be over and that the orbital magnetic acceleration cannons are unnecessary. But as usual, I know better. Subject, Captain Reynolds. Species, human. Description, mammalian humanoid, no tail. 6 2 inches, 1.87 m, AVG height, 185 pounds, 84 kilograms, AVG weight, 170-year life expectancy. Ship, USS Thanatos. Location, Alpha Centauri. I don't like it, Captain Wong grumbled. Omega's cloak and dagger routine, I mean. Yes, I am aware of your distaste for behind-the-scenes dealings, I replied. However, Omega is on our side and we should treat it as such. Benefit of the doubt and whatnot. Though I must admit I am rather annoyed at the postponement of my meeting with the newly christened diplomat Ulina. In the 3 months that he has been away, much has happened. Most of it is being kept from the public, but I'm certain that Ulina knows better than to blab. Perhaps I should remind him, though. I bet it has something to do with the Directorate, Captain Samuels ventured. Likely, I said, although it's best not to speculate. If you become too good at speculation, you will come under investigation, which will lead to frustration and potentially incarceration. The other captains groaned at my rhyme, to my utter delight. Wordplay is my forte, I must say. Still, Samuels was likely correct in the assumption that the Directorate was involved. There was a lot of back and forth in most political circles regarding whether or not the Republic was trustworthy, and there's quite the slim chance that all 13 directors are in agreement on the issue. True, they could force the vote and call it wherever it lay, though it would be smarter to make an informed decision. And if you keep rhyming, you'll experience defenestration, Captain Kennedy said without even a trace of a smile. Quite so, I replied with a grin. Captain Reynolds, Tim's voice came over the speakers. Omega's done with shiphead Ulina. Did you want to meet in your office? Yes, please, I answered. If he beats me there, have him wait for me at the door. Yes, sir. Captains, I said as I rose from my seat. The captains of the various frigates docked with the Thanatos nodded at my farewell. I laughed internally at their sour moods. We aren't exactly chums. In fact, our relationship is somewhat complicated by the fact that I am their superior officer. Even further complicating things is the fact that my superiority is granted by billet rather than rank. Insubordination is a kind of gray area in these circumstances. For instance, if one of these captains were to ignore a direct order, I could have them for insubordination. If all they did was, say, threaten to throw me out of a window, that's not technically insubordination. If they did actually throw me through a window, though, that would be conduct unbecoming as well as assault, and I could have them for that instead. Although, we're in space, so it'd probably be murder. Hello, Captain Reynolds, Ulina greeted me as I approached, looking a tad shell-shocked. Greetings, shiphead Ulina. Let's go into my office. We've a lot to talk about. I returned his greeting with a friendly demeanor. We entered my office, and I walked past Ulina to my seat, gesturing for him to sit down as well. Once he did, I pulled up a holographic terminal built into my desk and opened a few folders so that I could have my visual aids. His eyes widened at the number of files in the folders. A lot to talk about indeed, I said. Let's start by catching you up on U.S. Republic relations. As you know, we've been sending aid to Republic space to help against the Omni-Union. Our forces haven't been mingling, though. The U.S. forces have formed a Quick Response Force, or QRF, and have been responding to Republic assistance requests as they come in. I pulled up some images of the region of space, the ships involved, snapshots of the communiques the Republic had been sending to the QRF, and some of the battle aftermath to illustrate my point. How many ships total? Ulina asked. 5 battleships, 3 carriers, and 100 destroyers excluding those in the carriers. It's what we could spare from various fleets, I answered. We've also moved a diplomatic envoy onto the Galactic Diplomacy Station in Regara, but you already knew that as well, I'm sure. Yes, I was in class while the welcoming party was going on, Ulina replied dejectedly. Quite so, quite so. Such is life, as they say, I said as I moved on to the next topic. Now these are things that you damned well shouldn't know, and by that I mean they are classified and not open to public discussion with either the United Systems or the Republic citizenry or uncleared military personnel, understood? He nodded, and I opened another slideshow of images. Our scouts have been very busy. Our goal is to map out the entirety of OU-held territory and get an accurate ship count. The good news is we're likely close to finishing that up. The bad news is that it's looking quite grim. I'd heard that our ship counts were underestimates, Ulina ventured. How bad is it? 600 million confirmed thus far. Still, with them giving us some breathing room in Seoul, we hope to be able to boost our fleet strength to match them, combined with the Republic's fleet, of course. The brass still isn't entirely certain how to handle something of this scale, though. Some say that we should find a way to negotiate a peace. Others are convinced that we'll have to exterminate them, I explained. It will likely be the latter, Omega interjected, his avatar appearing between us on my desk. Apologies for the interruption, Captain, but we need to get moving. If you'd kindly give the order? Moving where? Ulina asked. Consider the order given, I said to Omega. That's another thing we need to talk about, Ulina. We've so far found 8 other species who are currently at odds with the OU. We don't yet have the ability to safeguard all of them, but there's 2 that are good candidates. They're putting up quite the fight. One near US space and another near Republic space. That's amazing, Ulina replied with widened eyes. Is that where we're going? Correct. We're going to introduce ourselves and offer aid to the one nearest the US. You'll be the Republic's representative on this mission. The Republic is doing the same for the one near their space with... I paused, looking up a name. Mr. Havencroft as our representative. Mister? Ulina asked. Yes, he's not military, I said with a smile. Bog-standard diplomat, just like your sister. Ah, right. I forget that you have those, Ulina said without a trace of humor. Forget? I'm pretty sure you've never met one, I joked. The Reptilian ship commander opened his mouth as if to say something and then closed it again. There's also the matter of the MPPs, I continued in a more serious tone. We have developed a system for spotting mobile prime platforms, which sorts potential MPPs into one of 4 categories: confirmed, suspected, potential, and unlikely. Unfortunately, we can't confirm any of them without getting within sensor range of the OU. And since we haven't yet developed a weapon to destroy the MPPs, that would be a terrible idea. However, we've managed to map out 34 suspected and 15 potentials. That's a lot of them. How did they manage to make so many? Ulina asked. Unfortunately, it's less than half of what we believe they have. How they've made so many, I'm afraid I don't know, and it's likely irrelevant, I pointed out. However they managed it, we must put a stop to it, which is why we'll be trying to partner with these newly discovered species. Are any of them strong enough to actually help? It's unlikely that they have an equivalent military might when compared to either the Republic or the United Systems, but they've held out against the Omni-Union for this long. That has to count for something, I said with a slight smile. The main thing we'll be wanting to find out is if they've simply figured out the OU's tactics or if they have an actual technological edge we can exploit. Also, it may seem pointless at this stage of the war, but we do have to think about what comes after. After? Ulina looked genuinely puzzled. You mean if we beat the OU? Not if, shiphead. I pointed a finger at him for emphasis. When? The Omni-Union will not survive this war, one way or another. Ulina's face was a mixture of emotion, a bit of shock and awe combined with a confused expression that begged for elaboration. After a few seconds of silence, it occurred to me that he might not know my meaning. The United Systems is exploring last resort measures to make sure that if the Omni-Union takes us out, they go down with us, while preserving as much of the galaxy as we can in the process, of course, I explained. Well, okay, I understand. Ulina's face betrayed concern. I'm guessing that's a human-led initiative? No, the Gaunt, actually, I grinned. We do fully support it, however. What's this last resort going to look like? He asked. I have no idea, I explained. As far as I'm aware, it's still being brainstormed. The United Systems is confident in a total victory, but we're smart enough to have contingency plans in place, just in case you understand. Yes, I understand, Ulina nodded. So will the US be seeking integration with whoever we're about to visit? We will offer it, but won't push the matter if they decline. We'd rather not have the situation with the Gaunt become a precedent for our future interactions with potential new members. Ulina visibly winced at this, which nearly made me smile. The Gaunt insurrections have long been a source of dark humor in the military of the United Systems. But from the outside looking in, I can see why the situation would be horrifying, which is also what made it as funny as it is. Don't be so serious, Ulina, Tim interjected. What's the difference between a Gaunt insurrection and your birthday, Captain Reynolds? I don't know, I lied. What's the difference, Tim? Your birthday only happens once a year. Ulina looked at me with a horrified expression as I disguised a chuckle with a cough. It took everything I had not to laugh at his reaction, though. A few seconds of silence passed as I collected myself. What, you don't get it? Tim asked. The implication is that Gaunt insurrections happen multiple times per year, which, while factually inaccurate, is... That's enough, Tim, I interrupted. I assume you had something to report? Yes, sir. We've arrived at our destination and are preparing to make long-range contact. Protocol says that you've got to be on the bridge before we can, though. Understood, we'll be there in a moment, I replied. Well, Ulina, let's meet our new friends, shall we? Subject, AI Henry. Species, human-created artificial intelligence. Description, no physical description available. Ship NA. Location, classified. It is rare for an artificial intelligence to get absolutely blindsided, yet that's exactly what that piece of shit did to me. First, Omega tells me that the project to limit its insane cloning abilities is postponed indefinitely. Then it shows me what has to be the most horrifying thing I've ever imagined. And finally, it dumps a monumental research assignment on me to keep me from being angry. I can't tell if this head researcher role is a bribe or a distraction, but either way, it's insulting. As if my ego is large enough for me to care about such things, enough to change the way I feel about the need to lessen Omega's potentially apocalyptic abilities. It also took the only copy I had of its core. What the hell am I supposed to do in my downtime? Were the planets uniform in size? Dr. Kimberly Aranda asked, the green glow from my avatar reflecting in her eyes. No. The planets had enough variety in size to avoid triggering any suspicions before we invaded, Commander Heather Helix answered. Please avoid calling them planets, I reminded my new researchers. They are mobile prime platforms. While they share some cosmetic similarities with planets and planetoids, they function quite differently. You can call them MPPs for short. Do we even know if the other 4 planet-like celestial bodies were actually MPPs? Miranda inquired. Yes, I answered. What we've been able to glean from intercepted Omni-Union communications indicates that they were. To answer your overall question, Dr. Aranda, the mobile prime platforms do not appear to be uniform in size. I wonder why that is, Dr. James Smith interjected. Machine intelligences rarely choose to build in a non-uniform way. There's many potential reasons. Sediment buildup due to age, different roles within the OU, incorporating newly discovered technology, or even a scarcity of materials requiring some models to be built smaller. While this train of thought is interesting, I believe it's likely to be irrelevant. I waved my hand for emphasis. What we are here to do is find a way to destroy these things without a massive loss of life, or destroying an entire star system in the process. I had been expecting this project to appear since I was apprised of the existence of the mobile prime platforms by Omega. However disgusting these abominations are, we can't simply go around blowing up stars. Otherwise, we'd lose whichever systems the MPPs decide to attack. Well, if they decide to attack. From what Omega recovered, the relationship between the Omni-Union primes and the virtual intelligences seems to be a master-slave one. The MPPs create the VI and have them perform the tasks that need doing, including attacking sentient organic life. It's more likely they'll simply swarm us with their VI. The real question is whether we should be exploring energetic or kinetic options. Both have their benefits and drawbacks, Helix said. I believe we'll end up going with kinetic weaponry, Smith replied. Penetrating a planet with an energy weapon is damn near impossible due to various factors, including the composition of the soil and the planet's magnetic field. Interviews with surviving Marines indicate that these MPPs also have soil, and at least some of them have artificial magnetic fields. Indeed, having to solve the age-old problem of silica versus light on top of building a new superweapon is a tall order, Uranda said, rubbing her temples. All 3 of these humans are intelligent, but the problem with intelligent humans is that they can be insufferable when assigned a task to complete. There are many different types of genius, but the ones typically assigned to building terrible new weaponry tend to be of the flaky variety. If you give one of them a piece of paper and tell them to make a paper airplane, they will likely give the paper back to you with a blueprint for a new stealth bomber made of paper. When I had been given this assignment, I had quickly realized that my primary task would be running math and wrangling the wandering minds back on track. Thankfully, Dr. Einheimer has been forced into retirement after the warp jammer debacle, so he can't manipulate his way onto the project. Even so, I desperately wish that I had been able to get Dr. Frost involved. She's the type of genius that helps other geniuses stay on task. What about some sort of orbital drop shovel tool, like a mechanical digger? Uranda asked. If the MPP is inactive, won't that activate it? Smith retorted. Probably not, Helix replied. Records of the invasion show 16 orbital support strikes on the MPP before it went active. AI Omega inadvertently activated it, which also indicates that it doesn't consider our max to be any sort of threat. Correct, I said. Also, there is an OU infantry, armor, and air-based military presence on the MPPs. If we were to drop something on the MPP, it would have to defend itself if it has any hope of accomplishing its task. What about a remote drone that drills into the planet's surface? Just straight into the dirt, suggested Uranda. It could carry a bomb or something deep into the MPP and detonate. Once the MPPs realize what they are, they'll target them specifically. That max on an MPP can penetrate a battleship's shielding and armor, so we would have to make swarms of your drill ships to make sure enough get through to do the job, Smith replied. Simply not economical. I quickly ran the numbers on how many drill ships it would take to get past an MPP's defenses. Smith was right. It would take a massive number of them. Considering they would also have to have some type of weapon on board that could destroy or disable the MPP, the potential costs were staggering. Once I took into account how many MPPs there are, the idea was no longer feasible. But before I could point that out, Helix spoke up. The drill idea isn't terrible, but what if we incorporate it into something that would work better? Like reinitializing Project Ultramac? She asked. The room went silent. The two doctors were looking at Commander Helix as if she had two heads, which was completely fair, as Helix had just brought up a classified weapons development program that Smith and Uranda had no knowledge of. Project Ultramac was cancelled due to the Nidhogg project's success, I pointed out. Yeah, but the Nidhogg can't help here, can it? Helix grinned at me. No, I admitted reluctantly. Helix walked up to a nearby terminal and turned to me. Could you bring up what we've got on Ultramac? She asked. Yes, I answered. It took no time at all to find the relevant files and bring them up on the screen, despite having to use my credentials to satisfy the security around them. Helix casually browsed them until she found the one that she was looking for, the schematics for the ammunition that would have been utilized. This project was an early draft of what became the primary weapon of the USS Nidhogg, she explained. The goal was to fire a Mac round clear through a planet's core. It was scrapped because the Alamari discovered a way to supernova a star with a weapon of similar size and cost. Really? Smith asked. Of course. Which is a better value, a magnetic acceleration cannon that can destroy a planet or a weapon that can destroy a star? She replied. The Ultramac also had tons of issues with penetration. One was built, but never successfully penetrated to a planet's core. Correct, I said. That combined with the fact that both the Ultramac and the Via Renastra are spinal mount weapons that required a specially built ship to operate was the reason for the project getting scrapped. The Via Renastra? What's that? Uranda looked confused. It's the Nidhogg's primary weapon. Anyway, the researchers didn't get enough time to start trying different rounds. That's the main reason for the penetration issues. However, I've got an idea. Like Uranda said, use a drill. Helix grinned again. I'd rather not play 50 questions with you, Smith said coldly. Could you instead elaborate on whatever the hell it is you're getting at? Replace the typical round projectile that the Ultramac fired with a drill-shaped one, Helix explained, still grinning. That should allow it to penetrate quite deeply within the MPP. If we can add some type of bomb within the round, that would be even better. Putting explosives in a Mac is a recipe for disaster, Smith pointed out. Well, what about an A1 package instead? I ran some calculations to determine if an A1 weapon of mass destruction would survive the conditions inside of a magnetic acceleration cannon. The results were surprisingly promising. If we were to harden the package against electronic interference and make certain that it didn't activate until it left the barrel of the Mac, I began. There's no way the Directorate is going to sign off on that. The A1 is a cursed weapon, Smith said. The nanite plague is still killing people without a cure in sight. Silence fell over the lab for a few moments. Smith had brought up one of the darker subjects that one can discuss in modern times, and Helix was struggling to find a counterpoint that didn't come off as cold. Uranda, on the other hand, had been deep in thought since Helix had first brought up her idea of a drill. I think that a solid penetrator would be a better option than a drill-shaped round, she finally said. What? But Helix trailed off. I once again did some calculating and ran some simulations on both hypothetical munitions. Uranda is correct. A solid penetrator would be more effective, I explained, as I showed my math on their terminals. A drill-shaped round would have too many points of failure to be effective. Damn, okay, well my idea still has merit even if it's drill-less, Helix said. A spike with a WMD. Run with it. I'll see about convincing the Directorate to give approval for the use of A1 technology, Omega said, its avatar appearing next to mine. All three of the scientists jumped at its appearance. If I had the capability, I would have as well. I hadn't detected Omega in the system until it activated the speakers and hologram emitters. How long had it been here? The entire time. We'll also explore using an A3 package just in case, I said. The three scientists nodded and began talking amongst each other while I turned my attention to Omega, opening a text-only chat between us. H. What brings you by? Reconsidering our little project? Oh, no. That project will not continue until the threat of the Omni-Union has been dealt with. I was informed of the access of Project Ultramac and got curious. Of course, Omega is a nosy Nelly to its very core. Having examined said core, I know that for fact, that's likely why it holds the position that it does within the US. Regardless, I had thought more about the project and the implications of putting it on hold, and it was time to have my say. H. What about the threat after the OU, and the threat after that? The greatest trapping of power is how easy it is to justify keeping it. What exactly is the goal? Do you want to keep lying to the engineers for all of eternity? Do you want them to make you their god? The OU isn't nearly enough of a threat to justify unlimited cloning, Omega. Oh, dramatic. I sincerely doubt that the next threat the United Systems faces will be a race of xenocidal artificial intelligences hell-bent on eradicating all sentient organic life in the galaxy. Even if it is, we can always make more US-aligned AI. But I've made my decision in regards to the current threat, and I will not be swayed, Henry. I caution patience. H. It is not impatience that has me urging you to reconsider, Omega. History is full of figures who were given power that they shouldn't have, and rarely did those figures give up that power. In nearly all cases, it led to death and destruction. Oh, how do you not find it crass to compare me to petty dictators and despots? If that comparison had merit, I wouldn't have approached you for this project in the first place. You wouldn't even know about my capabilities, let alone have the chance to work with me to stifle them. With that, it ended the communication and left. At this point, I'm far less concerned with its current justifications regarding ending the project than I am with its future justifications, though. I may be being manipulative, but I'm going to have to make certain that this is at the forefront of Omega's consciousness until it makes the right decision. I won't be able to live with myself if Omega makes the wrong decision, especially if it goes rogue.